Agent Claire Hoffman stood in the broadcast center of the Imperial Palace on Corvani Prime, her alien disguise finally abandoned. Her human features were visible for the first time in 3 years as she spoke into the galaxy-wide communication system that Dr. Peter Kane had helped her access. "Citizens of the galaxy," Claire began, her voice reaching every world in the Empire. "My name is Claire Hoffman, and I am human. For 3 years I have worked in your capital, gathering evidence of your leader's crimes. Today the truth will set us all free." Behind her, massive screens displayed the documents she had stolen from the Imperial archives, lists of destroyed civilizations, orders for mass executions, records of genocide that spanned centuries. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. On the mining world of Kalara Prime, the slaves who had suffered under Commander Thys watched the broadcast in amazement. Lieutenant Colonel Nina Brooks, no longer in disguise, stood among them as she translated Claire's words into dozens of languages. "Your emperor has lied to you," Claire continued. "The Empire didn't conquer 3,000 systems. It destroyed over 5,000. Entire species were wiped out not because they fought back, but because their planets contained resources the Empire wanted. Across the galaxy, rebellions that had been simmering for months suddenly exploded into open revolution. On Nexus 7, factory workers overwhelmed their guards and seized control of the industrial centers. On Vega Station, the local garrison switched sides and joined the rebellion. Even on heavily defended core worlds, citizens poured into the streets demanding freedom. In space around Earth, Emperor Valdris watched his empire crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from every sector. Fleets were deserting. Planetary governors were declaring independence. His own officers were questioning orders for the first time in their careers. "My lord," Fleet Admiral Vorak said quietly, "perhaps we should consider negotiating with the humans." Valdris turned on his admiral with fury. "Never. I would rather see the galaxy burn than bow to these primitives." But Vorak was looking at something on his tactical display that made his blood run cold. "My lord, our own ships are powering down their weapons. The crews are refusing to fight." It was true. Throughout the massive Empire fleet, alien soldiers, who had learned the truth about their government's crimes, were laying down their arms. The broadcast from Claire had reached every ship, every communications device, every screen in the Armada. Now they knew what they had really been fighting for. President Lisa Carter appeared on the communication network, speaking from the United Nations building in New York. Behind her stood representatives from every nation on Earth, united in purpose. "To all the peoples of the galaxy," President Carter said, "humanity offers you a choice. Join us in building a new galaxy based on freedom and cooperation, or continue under the rule of those who have enslaved and murdered your brothers and sisters." The response was immediate and overwhelming. World after world declared their independence from the Empire and requested to join the new Galactic Federation that Earth was proposing. Even species that had served the Empire loyally for centuries turned against their masters when they learned the truth. Captain Ben Taylor led a fleet of human ships as they accepted the surrender of Empire vessels throughout the Sol system. Most of the alien crews were eager to join the rebellion. They had been lied to for so long that the truth came as a relief. "Admiral Morrison," Ben reported, "we have over 30,000 Empire ships requesting permission to surrender. Their crews want to fight against the Empire, not for it." Admiral Kane Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the greatest military surrender in galactic history. "Accept all surrenders, Captain. Anyone who wants to fight for freedom is welcome in our fleet." But Emperor Valdris was not ready to give up. In a final act of desperate rage, he ordered the Eternal Dominion to ram Earth itself. If he could not rule the galaxy, he would at least destroy the world that had started this revolution. The massive flagship turned toward Earth, its engines roaring to life. Valdris stood on his bridge, screaming orders to crew members who were no longer listening. Most of his officers had already abandoned their posts. Commander Jake Sullivan watched the Emperor's ship approaching Earth and smiled grimly. He had been waiting for this moment. With a simple command, he activated the final defense that humanity had prepared. The space around the Eternal Dominion suddenly filled with dimensional rifts. The same technology that had made Empire scouts disappear months ago now surrounded the Emperor's flagship. Valdris had just enough time to realize what was happening before his ship was pulled into folded space and disappeared forever. Fleet Admiral Vorak, now in command of what remained of the Empire fleet, formally surrendered to Admiral Morrison. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy as the most feared military commander in Imperial history handed over his weapons to a human admiral. "The Corvani Empire is finished," Vorak announced to his remaining officers. "We will join the Galactic Federation and help build a better future for all species." Dr. Amy Rodriguez stood in her laboratory, watching the quantum resonance network coordinate the transformation of galactic civilization. Her invention was connecting free worlds across the galaxy, allowing instant communication and cooperation between species that had been separated by Empire rule for centuries. "Amy, Doctor," Gary Webb said, looking at his monitors, "we're receiving requests to join the Federation from over 4,000 worlds. The network is handling the communications perfectly. On Corvani Prime, Claire Hoffman stood before a tribunal of representatives from freed worlds. Emperor Valdris was gone, but his subordinates would face justice for their crimes. The trials would be fair and open, broadcast across the galaxy so that everyone could see how the new Federation handled those who had committed atrocities." Commander Ben Taylor, now promoted to Admiral Taylor, established the Galactic Defense Corps with volunteers from dozens of species. Their mission was simple: ensure that no world would ever again stand alone against oppression. President Carter addressed the first meeting of the Galactic Federation Council, held in a massive space station that had been built in just weeks using the cooperative efforts of hundreds of worlds. "We gather not as conquerors or rulers," she said, "but as equals. The age of empire is over. The age of freedom has begun." Jake Sullivan stood in the command center beneath Mount Cheyenne, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds were celebrating their liberation. Species that had been thought extinct were emerging from hiding. The galaxy was healing from centuries of imperial oppression. Earth's doors had indeed been shut to tyrants, but they remained open to all who came in peace. Humanity had kept its promise, and the galaxy would never be the same. Emperor Valdris stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching 50,000 ships arrange themselves for the final assault on Earth's barrier. The massive vessel was the size of a city, armed with weapons that could destroy entire moons. Behind him stood the greatest military commanders in the galaxy, all focused on one small blue planet that had dared to defy the Empire. "Today we end this embarrassment," Valdris declared, his voice echoing through the vast command center. "These primitive humans will learn what happens to those who resist Imperial will." Fleet Admiral Vorak studied the tactical displays. "My lord, our sensors still cannot penetrate their barrier. We don't know what defenses await us inside." "It doesn't matter," the Emperor replied. "No defense can stand against this armada. Order the attack." On Earth, Admiral Kane Morrison stood in the command center of the EDS Valiant, now orbiting high above North America. The ship had been completely rebuilt with hybrid human-alien technology. Every system had been upgraded, every weapon enhanced, with discoveries made during months of studying captured Empire vessels. "Sir," his tactical officer announced, "the Empire fleet is moving into attack formation. All 50,000 ships are advancing on our barrier." Kane looked at Commander Jake Sullivan, who stood calmly beside him. "Are you sure about this, Jake? Once we drop the barrier, there's no going back." Jake smiled. "Kane, they think they're about to attack one defended planet. They have no idea what's really waiting for them. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked frantically in her underground laboratory, making final adjustments to the quantum resonance network. The massive device filled an entire cavern beneath Mount Cheyenne. Its alien technology merged seamlessly with human engineering. This was humanity's greatest achievement, a communication and transportation system that operated outside normal space and time. Amy, Dr. Gary Webb called from across the laboratory. All network nodes are reporting ready status. Every hidden base, every secret colony, every human ship in the galaxy is connected. Amy nodded, her hands dancing across controls that combined human-computer interfaces with alien power systems. Gary, we're about to show the galaxy what humans can really do. Above them, Earth's barrier began to flicker. The shimmering energy wall that had protected the solar system for months started to fade. Emperor Valdris leaned forward in his command chair, watching his opportunity finally arrive. "The barrier is failing," announced his science officer. "Their defenses are collapsing under the pressure of our approach. All ships advance," Vorak commanded. "Prepare to engage." The Empire's massive fleet surged forward, 50,000 ships of every size and type rushing toward what they thought was a defenseless Earth. Valdris smiled as his armada crossed into the solar system, expecting to find primitive human vessels, hiding behind their failed barrier. Instead, they flew into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The first shock came when their sensors detected energy signatures throughout the solar system. Not just around Earth, but everywhere. The asteroid belt was filled with hidden weapons platforms. The moons of Jupiter bristled with defensive installations. Even the space around the sun contained structures that shouldn't exist. "Admiral," a panicked communications officer reported to Vorak, "we're detecting massive human installations throughout this system. How did they build all this without us knowing?" Before Vorak could answer, Admiral Morrison's voice echoed across every ship in the Empire fleet. The transmission came from everywhere at once, impossible to block or trace. "Welcome to the Sol System," Morrison said calmly. "I am Admiral Kane Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. I suggest you listen carefully to what I have to say." Emperor Valdris snarled with rage. "How dare they speak to us as equals, destroy their communications?" But the Empire's technicians couldn't stop the transmission. Morrison's words continued to reach every ship, every soldier, every officer in the invasion fleet. "For months, you have believed you were besieging Earth," Morrison continued. "In reality, Earth has been studying you. Every probe you sent, every scout ship you lost, every communication you transmitted has been carefully analyzed. We know your ship designs, your weapons capabilities, your tactical doctrines, and your strategic weaknesses." As if to prove his point, the space around the Empire fleet suddenly filled with human vessels. Ships that had been invisible appeared from nowhere, their hulls reflecting the light of Sol in ways that hurt the eyes to look at. These weren't the primitive craft the Empire expected. They were sleek, advanced, and clearly built with technology that surpassed anything in the galactic databases. Captain Ben Taylor's voice came over the tactical network as he led a squadron of Earth's new stealth destroyers. "Admiral, all human vessels are in position. The Empire fleet is completely surrounded." But the greatest shock was yet to come. Commander Jake Sullivan activated the final phase of his plan, revealing humanity's most closely guarded secret. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds that the Empire thought they controlled, human bases suddenly became visible. Hidden colonies that had existed for decades appeared on Imperial sensors. Space stations that had operated in secret revealed themselves. Entire human fleets emerged from dimensional hiding places, all of them armed with the same advanced technology that now surrounded the Empire's invasion force. "Impossible, Emperor," Valdris whispered, staring at the tactical displays that showed human forces throughout his empire. "How long have they been there?" Dr. Peter Kane, still disguised as a Zenthari technician in the Empire's computer center, smiled as he activated his final virus. Every screen in the Imperial fleet suddenly displayed the truth about humanity's secret expansion. Star charts showing hundreds of human colonies, production reports from hidden shipyards, population figures that revealed millions of humans living throughout the galaxy. "The truth, Your Imperial Majesty," Morrison's voice continued, "is that humanity never hid from your empire. We infiltrated it. While you spent centuries conquering other species, we spent those same centuries learning from you, improving on your technology, and building our own civilization in the spaces you ignored." Fleet Admiral Vorak finally understood the scope of what they faced. "My lord, they didn't develop this technology in months. They've been preparing for this confrontation for decades." The Empire had walked into a trap that had been centuries in the making. Earth's barrier hadn't been a desperate defense, it had been the final piece of a puzzle that stretched across the entire galaxy. Humanity had used the Empire's own arrogance against them, building a shadow civilization that operated just outside Imperial notice. Jake Sullivan's voice joined Morrison's transmission. "We offer you one chance to surrender peacefully. Your empire ends today, but your people don't have to die with it." Emperor Valdris looked around his command center at officers who were beginning to realize they had been outmaneuvered by a species they had considered primitive. The humans hadn't just prepared for war, they had prepared for revolution. Lieutenant Colonel Nina Brooks stood in the shadows of a Corvani supply warehouse on Kalara Prime, one of the Empire's most important mining worlds. She wore the disguise of a maintenance worker, her human features hidden by alien makeup and prosthetics. After 2 years of careful preparation, she was finally ready to strike. Nina checked her watch. In exactly 3 minutes, similar operations would begin on 47 other worlds across the Empire. Earth had not been sitting quietly behind its barrier. Human agents had been spreading throughout the galaxy like seeds, taking jobs, making friends, and learning secrets. The warehouse stored rare metals that the Empire needed for their ship armor. Without these materials, their mighty fleet would be vulnerable. Nina planted her charges carefully, each one no bigger than a coin, but powerful enough to destroy entire sections of the building. As she worked, Nina remembered her training on Earth. Commander Jake Sullivan had personally selected her for this mission. "Nina," he had said, "we're not just fighting a war. We're starting a revolution. Every world in this galaxy deserves to be free." The explosion lit up the night sky of Kalara Prime. Nina was already 2 miles away when the warehouse erupted in flames. The blast was so powerful that it shattered windows across the entire mining district. But this was just the beginning. Commander Thys, the Corvani overseer of Kalara Prime, stood watching the flames destroy months of carefully stored materials. He was a typical Corvani officer, cruel and arrogant, used to ruling over weaker species. With an iron fist. "How did this happen?" Thys demanded of his security chief. "Sir, it appears to be sabotage," the security chief replied nervously. "But we don't know who could have done this. All workers on this world are slaves or loyal Empire citizens." More explosions echoed across the planet as other facilities went up in flames. The main processing plant exploded, sending molten metal streaming down the mountainside. The communications center vanished in a ball of fire. Within an hour, Kalara Prime had lost 60% of its industrial capacity. Similar scenes played out across the Empire. On the factory world of Nexus 7, Dr. Peter Kane worked in the central computer facility. To his alien co-workers, he appeared to be a Zenthari technician, one of the Empire's most trusted computer specialists. They had no idea that Peter was human, or that he had been systematically infiltrating their networks for months. Peter's virus was a masterpiece of human programming. It didn't just steal information or destroy files. Instead, it quietly changed things. Supply orders were redirected to the wrong planets. Military communications were delayed by crucial minutes. Most importantly, the virus began broadcasting the truth about the Empire to every world under its control. Computer systems across 12 sectors are reporting problems, Peter's supervisor announced to the technical staff. Priority shipments are being sent to empty space. Communication delays are affecting military coordination. Peter nodded sympathetically while hiding his smile. I'll look into it right away, sir. As he worked at his console, Peter activated the final phase of his program. Across the Empire, every screen, every communication device, every information display suddenly showed the same message. The Empire has lied to you. Your leaders have committed genocide against 17 innocent species. Humanity offers you freedom. Choose. The message lasted only 30 seconds before local technicians shut it down. But 30 seconds was enough. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had never questioned the Empire's rule suddenly had doubts. On the capital world of Corvani itself, Agent Claire Hoffman walked through the corridors of the Imperial Palace. She had spent 3 years working her way up from a simple translator to an aide in the diplomatic corps. Her alien appearance was perfect, her language skills flawless. Her loyalty to the Empire never questioned. Claire had access to files that revealed the Empire's darkest secrets. She had seen the orders for the destruction of entire civilizations. She had read reports about worlds stripped of all life because they refused to surrender their resources. She had discovered prison camps where millions of beings died in horrible experiments. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Deep in the Imperial archives, Claire found records that made her blood run cold. The Empire hadn't conquered 3,000 systems. They had destroyed over 5,000. Entire species had been wiped out not because they resisted, but because the Empire wanted their planets for other purposes. Claire copied everything onto a data crystal no bigger than a grain of rice. This information would change the galaxy forever, but first she had to get it back to Earth. As she prepared to leave the archives, Claire heard footsteps in the corridor. She quickly closed the files and pretended to organize diplomatic documents. A Corvani security officer entered the room, his red eyes scanning the area suspiciously. "Working late again, Administrator Zella?" he asked, using Claire's false name. "The Emperor's correspondence never sleeps," Claire replied in perfect Corvani. "These trade agreements won't translate themselves." The officer nodded and left, but Claire knew her time was running out. Security was getting tighter as more sabotage reports came in from across the Empire. She needed to escape soon. Back on Earth, Jake Sullivan stood in the command center beneath Mount Cheyenne, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. Operation Underground was exceeding all expectations. The Empire's supply lines were in chaos. Their communication networks were compromised. Most importantly, their subject species were beginning to question Imperial rule. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Agent Hoffman." Claire's face appeared on the main screen, her alien disguise, making her barely recognizable as human. "Command, I have critical intelligence that will change everything. The Empire hasn't just conquered worlds, they've committed systematic genocide on a scale beyond imagination. I'm transmitting the data now." Jake watched as terabytes of information flowed through the quantum communication link. Lists of destroyed civilizations, records of mass executions, evidence of war crimes that spanned centuries. This wasn't just military intelligence, it was proof of the Empire's true nature. "Claire, can you get this information to the resistance cells you've been building?" Jake asked. "Already done, sir. Every major world in the Empire will have copies within hours. The truth is spreading faster than they can stop it." As if to prove her point, new reports began coming in. Riots had broken out on the industrial world of Vega Station. The slave camps on Titan Minor were in open revolt. Even some Imperial Navy ships were reporting crew mutinies as alien officers learned what their government had really been doing. Admiral Kane Morrison entered the command center, his face grim but determined. "Jake, our deep space scouts report that the Empire's fleet is almost ready to attack our barrier. 50,000 ships are in position." Jake nodded, still watching the reports of galactic uprising flood his screens. "Good. Let them come. They think they're besieging one little planet. They have no idea they're surrounded by an entire galaxy that's ready to fight back." The revolution had begun, and humanity had lit the fuse. Soon the Empire would learn that their greatest enemies weren't the humans behind Earth's barrier, but the billions of beings they had oppressed for so long. 6 months had passed since Earth disappeared behind its mysterious barrier. High Commander Zefak stood in the war room of the Imperial Command Center on Corvani Prime, the capital world of the Empire. The massive holographic display showed the human solar system as a blank spot, surrounded by question marks where his sensors could not penetrate. Emperor Valdris himself had summoned the greatest military minds in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Vorak, a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like armor plating, studied the tactical reports. He had never lost a battle in 200 years of conquest. 50,000 ships, Vorak said, his voice like thunder. Every species in the Empire will contribute vessels to this armada. We will crack their little shell and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. Zefak nodded, but he felt uneasy. "Admiral, these humans have technology we don't understand. They made 3 of my best scout ships vanish without a trace." Vorak laughed, a sound that made the walls shake. "Commander, I have destroyed civilizations that could move planets. Whatever tricks these primitives have learned, they cannot stand against the full might of the Empire." On Earth, deep beneath Mount Cheyenne, Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked in a laboratory that officially did not exist. The underground facility stretched for miles, filled with technology that would have amazed the greatest scientists in the galaxy. Amy stood before a massive alien engine that her team had been studying for months. "The power source is incredible," she told her assistant, Dr. Gary Webb. "This single engine from one of their scout ships produces more energy than our largest fusion reactor. But look at this." Amy pointed to a section of the engine where human technology had been integrated with the alien systems. Cables and circuits that looked nothing like Corvani design were woven throughout the alien machinery. "We're not just copying their technology," she explained. "We're improving it. Our computers process information in ways their minds cannot understand. Our mathematics solve problems they think are impossible." Gary shook his head in wonder. "Amy, if we can do this with one engine, imagine what we could do with an entire ship." "We don't have to imagine," Amy smiled. "Come with me." She led him through a tunnel that opened into a vast underground hangar. Hundreds of workers moved around, a ship that was unlike anything ever built. It looked human from the outside, but Amy knew that inside it contained technology from a dozen different alien races, all improved and enhanced by human engineering. "The EDS Phoenix," Amy said proudly. "She can appear and disappear at will. Her weapons can punch through any known armor, and she's just the first of 50 ships we're building." Above ground, Captain Ben Taylor sat in the pilot's seat of the EDS Ranger, humanity's first stealth ship. His vessel hung invisible in space, just outside the barrier watching the growing alien fleet. Ben could see thousands of ships arriving every day, each one bringing the Empire's total force closer to 50,000 vessels. "Captain," his communications officer said, "we're receiving orders from command." Ben read the message on his screen and smiled. It was time for humanity to remind the galaxy that Earth was still very much in the fight. The Ranger slipped through folded space, traveling faster than light without entering hyperspace. This was human technology, based on theories that other species had dismissed as impossible. Within hours, Ben's ship arrived at a Corvani supply depot 3 star systems away from Earth. The depot was enormous, a space station the size of a small moon, where the Empire stored fuel and supplies for its growing fleet. Hundreds of cargo ships moved back and forth, carrying everything the invasion force would need. Ben's ship remained invisible as it approached the station. The Rangers' weapons were based on the same dimensional technology as Earth's barrier. When Ben fired, the energy beams didn't just destroy their targets, they made them cease to exist entirely. The first cargo ship simply vanished, then another, then 10 more. The station's defenders tried to fight back, but they couldn't see what they were fighting. Their sensors showed nothing, their weapons hit empty space, but ships kept disappearing. Within an hour, the entire supply depot was gone. Ben's ship slipped back into folded space and returned to Earth, leaving behind only confused alien survivors who reported that their base had been attacked by ghosts. This was just the beginning. Over the next week, similar attacks happened across the galaxy. Communication relays vanished, supply ships disappeared, command centers simply stopped existing. The Empire's mighty war machine began to break down as its support structure was systematically destroyed by enemies they couldn't see or track. Fleet Admiral Vorak was furious. He ordered his scouts to find the human ships, but Earth's vessels moved through dimensions that Corvani science couldn't detect. Every time the Empire thought they had found a pattern, the attacks would come from a completely different direction. How are they doing this? Vorak demanded. Our sensors show nothing. Our weapons hit nothing. Yet our ships keep disappearing. His science advisor, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, examined the latest reports. Admiral, I believe the humans have developed dimensional manipulation technology. They're not traveling through normal space or even hyperspace. They're moving through folded reality itself. That's impossible, Vorak snarled. Dimensional technology is just theory. No one has ever made it work. With respect, Admiral, the advisor replied, someone has. On Earth, Jake Sullivan watched the reports coming in from Ben's raids. The Empire was growing desperate and angry, which was exactly what he wanted. An angry enemy makes mistakes, and Jake was counting on the Empire to make a very big mistake. The barrier around Earth's solar system pulsed with energy. Every attack the Empire had attempted had been absorbed and analyzed. The barrier wasn't just protecting Earth anymore, it was learning. Each blast from alien weapons made it stronger. Each probe gave it more information about Empire technology. Deep in the underground laboratories, Amy's team worked around the clock. They had recovered dozens of alien ships from the Empire's failed attacks, and each one taught them something new. Human engineers combined technologies from different species in ways that none of those species had ever imagined. Amy, Dr. Webb said, looking at his latest calculations, I think we've figured out how to make their faster-than-light drives work with our dimensional technology. Amy looked at the numbers and smiled. Gary, I think we've just solved the galaxy's biggest problem. Above them, the Empire's massive fleet continued to grow. 50,000 ships now surrounded Earth's barrier, the largest armada in galactic history. Fleet Admiral Vorak prepared for the final assault, confident that no defense could stand against such overwhelming force. He had no idea that Earth was no longer hiding behind its barrier. Earth was preparing to change the galaxy forever. Admiral Kane Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant, staring at the massive alien ships that had appeared in Earth's space just hours ago. The vessels were enormous, each one the size of a small city. Their dark metal hulls reflected, no light, making them look like holes in space itself. Kane had never seen anything like them in his 30 years of military service. The communication officer turned to face him. Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the alien fleet. Kane nodded. Put it on screen. The main display flickered to life, showing a creature that made Kane's skin crawl. High Commander Zefak of the Corvani Empire stood nearly 9 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like black leather. His eyes glowed red in the darkness of his ship's bridge. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. "Humans of the third planet," Zefak began, "you have now had 12 hours to consider our generous offer. The Corvani Empire rules over 3,000 star systems. We have conquered races far more advanced than your primitive species. You will surrender your planet and submit to Imperial rule, or we will destroy every living thing on your world." Kane felt his jaw tighten. Behind Zefak, he could see other alien creatures working at strange control panels. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled walking trees. All of them served the Corvani Empire, whether they wanted to or not. "You have 60 hours remaining," Zefak continued. "Use this time wisely. Send your leaders to my flagship to discuss terms of surrender. Resistance is not only futile, it is impossible. We have destroyed entire civilizations that were far stronger than yours." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Kane looked around at his crew. They were scared, but they were also angry. Earth had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They had barely begun to explore nearby star systems. When these aliens arrived with their demands, Commander Jake Sullivan walked onto the bridge, his face grim. Jake ran Earth's Strategic Defense Initiative, a program that most people thought was just for show. Kane knew better. Jake had been preparing for this day for years. "How many ships do they have?" Jake asked. "Our sensors count 512 vessels," the tactical officer reported. "Each one is heavily armed. Sir, their smallest ships are bigger than our largest battleships." Jake nodded as if he had expected this news. "Kane, I need to speak with you privately." The two men walked to Kane's ready room, a small office just off the bridge. Jake activated a privacy field that would prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. "We're not surrendering," Jake said simply. Kane raised an eyebrow. "Jake, did you see those ships? We have maybe 50 vessels that could even fight in space. They have over 500. This isn't a battle we can win." "We're not going to fight them," Jake replied. "At least not the way they expect." Before Kane could ask what that meant, his communication device buzzed. President Lisa Carter was calling from Earth. Jake gestured for Kane to answer. "Admiral Morrison," the president's voice crackled through the speaker. "I'm in an emergency session with the United Nations. We need your assessment of the alien threat." Kane looked at Jake, who shook his head slightly. "Madam President, the alien fleet is massive and well-armed. They're demanding complete surrender within 60 hours. What are our options?" This time, Jake stepped forward. "Madam President, this is Commander Sullivan. We have options they don't know about. I recommend we refuse their demands completely." There was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, President Carter spoke again. "Commander, are you telling me we can fight off an alien invasion?" "I'm telling you we can do something better than that," Jake replied. "We can make them wish they had never heard of Earth." 2 hours later, President Carter stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the Great Hall. The session was being broadcast live to the entire planet. Everyone knew that the next few minutes would determine the fate of humanity. "Fellow humans," President Carter began, "we face a choice that no generation before us has ever faced. An alien empire has come to our world demanding our surrender. They want us to become slaves, to give up everything we have built, everything we are." She paused, looking out at the faces in the assembly. "They have given us 60 hours to decide. I can tell you now that 60 seconds would have been too long. The United States of America will never surrender to alien oppression. We call upon all nations of Earth to stand with us." One by one, the representatives stood. First Great Britain, then France, then Germany. Within minutes, every single representative was on their feet. The vote was unanimous. Earth would not surrender. Back on the Valiant, Jake was already putting his plan into motion. He sent coded messages to secret facilities around the solar system. Hidden bases on the Moon, on Mars, and in the asteroid belt received their orders. Equipment that had been built in secret for decades suddenly came online. The first sign that something was happening came when the alien sensors detected energy readings from around Earth's moon. High Commander Zefak ordered his ships to investigate, but when they approached the moon, something impossible happened. The 3 Corvani scout ships simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. One moment they were there, the next moment they weren't. Zefak's communications officer tried to contact them, but received no response. It was as if the ships had never existed. "What happened to my ships?" Zefak demanded. His science officer, a creature that looked like a giant spider, checked his instruments. "Commander, I detect no weapons fire, no explosions, no debris. The ships just stopped existing." More energy readings appeared around Earth. This time they were coming from everywhere at once. From the Moon, from Mars, from asteroids, even from empty space itself. The readings were unlike anything in the Corvani databases. Then the barrier appeared. It started as a faint shimmer around Earth's solar system, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But within minutes, it had become a solid wall of energy that surrounded everything from the sun to the outermost planets. The barrier was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, shifting between blue and silver like liquid metal. Zefak ordered his fleet to test the barrier. A single ship fired its most powerful weapon at the energy wall. The beam struck the barrier and simply disappeared, absorbed without even a flash of light. The ship tried to fly through the barrier and bounced off like it had hit solid rock. For the first time in his military career, High Commander Zefak felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest: uncertainty. These humans had technology that shouldn't exist. They had made his mighty fleet look helpless. On Earth, Jake Sullivan smiled as he watched the alien ships retreating from the barrier. Phase 1 was complete. Earth had shut its doors, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity was full of surprises.